are two of the biggest sporting events in the world right now, Super Bowl 48 and this year's Winter Olympics in Sochi. And security is, of course, a major concern. Millions of your tax dollars going towards efforts to keep everyone safe. The FBI, CIA, and local law enforcement, and even the military all playing a role. Stephen Yates is a former deputy assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney for National Security Affairs. And we welcome you, Stephen. How are you?
Hi, Arthel. Great to be with you.
Stephen, which event would you say is more daunting, the Super Bowl or the Sochi Olympics in terms of security?
Well, no major public event has 100% security, but I am much more comfortable with the approach that's likely to be taken in the greater New York area than with the Sochi Olympics.
Really? So you're a little more concerned about that. And if you are concerned about what's happening in terms of security there in Russia, would you say the Russian officials are cooperating with the U.S. when it comes to coordinating security efforts?
Yeah, control and cooperation are a big point in this. I mean, really, with the Super Bowl, greater New York area, we have people who have tested in real-life experience protecting major events over multiple years since 9/11. With Russia, there's really some mixed messages about how much our government and the Russian authorities have been able to cooperate. It's, of course, Russian sovereign territory. They consider it their job to keep security for the major event, and they're committed to that. But we have some in our government, including the president, who seem confident that the Russians understand the stakes. But there's a lot of people who say that there's very limited cooperation between the Russian authorities and other governments. And so we don't know enough about the threat and what will really be done in case there's an emergency.
But the U.S. is preparing some security efforts there in Russia, correct?
Well, we have some U.S. officials that say that we'll have some ships in the Black Sea offshore, and that's, I suppose, a show of support and being prepared for contingencies. But it's very unclear what they might really be able to do. If something should go wrong in the Olympics, would the Russians be really open to international intervention to help, or would they try to do too much themselves, perhaps? And so lack of real openness and cooperation from the outset, I think, limits what our forces could really do in a contingency.
Well, let's hope nothing major happens there. Let's move on over to Super Bowl now. Of course, we've got Times Square. We've got like a 13-block area blocked off, including Super Bowl Boulevard. But as you say, there is some live pictures for you right there. People are already cramming into the area. It's very festive, I have to say. But, you know, they're more used to these types of events. We see this place crowded for New Year's Eve, etc. But, of course, they have to take measures to protect folks for this particular event. And we're talking about 80,000 people going to MetLife Stadium, and you have those open areas, Stephen, around MetLife Stadium. How challenging are the open areas in terms of protecting the folks?
Well, challenge is significant. There's no getting around that. But we have a lot of resources going into people who are using a lot of technology to analyze behavior, being prepositioned in a number of different areas. Anyone who's concerned about civil liberties and surveillance should not go into these kinds of areas, because I think literally every square inch is going to be watched very, very carefully. There's, I think, less of a risk for active shooting type events, things that would require those kinds of weapons, but there's going to be a lot of concern about something like the Boston bombing, a package that just gets left behind and maybe gets ignored. So security people are going to have to be vigilant. Attendees are going to need to be vigilant and cooperative. But in general, in the greater New York area, there's a lot of history of people going to big events and basically doing their part for everyone's sake.
Very good. I mean, because, of course, you got folks going over there by train, by subway, by cars, private and public. But you feel overall, you would say that you're feeling pretty good in terms of security regarding the Super Bowl.
I don't think anyone that's in charge of security ever sort of relaxes until the event is over, and that's appropriate. And I'm sure they're going to be watching every angle of access to the event. But I think we have a finite geography and a finite period of time with significant resources going at it. So my hope is everyone enjoys the game.
Enjoy the game yourself, Stephen Yates.